Hi guys, this is Pete from MyJewelryBench.com. Today we're looking at a Tudor Rolex model. It's a beautiful watch. I just serviced it. We found that it had a damaged hack. The hack is what stops the balance wheel from turning when you pull it out to the second, when you pull the crown out to the second position. So today what we're going to do is replace the hack with a brand new one. So here you can see what I'm doing is I'm putting the correct size case opener in the Rolex case back tool, and it always gives me a little problem. I always have a hard time getting these lined up for some reason. Got it in there. Let's put the watch in the case opener. You can see here I always use a rubber pad to hold the watch in the case opener. This way I don't have to worry about damaging the watch case. So once it's tightened down, I'll use the pry bar and then gently turn it, and you can see the case back is unscrewing from the case. A couple more turns and then we can just use the handle to unwind it. Once that's done, we'll put it back on the bench, remove the case back, and start looking at what we have to do. First step is to remove the automatic winder, and that's the part with the flywheel on it. So what we're going to start doing is removing the two screws on this particular model that hold the auto winder in place, and I'm going to take the whole piece out, including the flywheel. Since the watch was just serviced and tested, it works good. Just going to remove the first screw here, and of course, like I always say, be careful when you're unscrewing these. You don't want to put too much pressure on these. These screws can be damaged. And always remember when you're grabbing the screw with the tweezers to pick them up very gently. If you squeeze too hard, you run the risk of popping that little screw out of the tweezer, and that screw will go flying across the room. You'll probably never find it again. If you're lucky, you will. So here we just unscrewed it. Now I'm going to pry off the auto winder very gently as to not touch any of the gears or articulation. And there we go. Put it aside. Now here I'm going to unwind the watch spring, the main spring. It's pretty important that you unwind it before you do this job, since you do have to remove the balance and the clutch assembly for the mainspring winder. And once that spring lets down, we can start unscrewing everything and taking the ratchet wheels out. So here I'm just making sure it's unwound. It probably has a little more power in it. The balance wheel's turning just a little bit more. It's going to unwind as soon as I take out the screw for the ratchet. But here I'm taking the balance cock screw out and gently turning it. What I don't want to do is slip with the screwdriver and touch the balance cock. I want to keep the balance cock in its position until I'm ready to remove it. And here I'm just pulling it out very, very gently. Remember, the balance staff on that balance wheel is pretty delicate. Now we're going to take the ratchet wheel off the mainspring. This unscrews counterclockwise just like a normal screw would. And make sure you don't mess up with those screws. Keep everything organized on your bench or in a parts tray. I do have on my website the parts trays that I use, and I always recommend them. So here we're going to take the screw out of the other ratchet, and this unscrews clockwise, so it's a reverse thread. Be very careful not to try to unscrew it counterclockwise. You'll damage it or break the head off, and if you do that, you'll almost never be able to fix that part. You'll end up replacing the whole bridge. So I'm going to take out the gear here, and then the next step is we're going to look at, you see the little click in the click spring. We're going to remove the click out of this just to make it a little easier to work on, because that way I keep the click on the bench. I don't have to worry about the click slipping somewhere, falling off, getting lost. I'm just going to examine everything, make sure that everything's in good shape. I'm going to look and see now if the hack is moving, and you probably didn't see it, but the hack, unfortunately, it's damaged and it's not touching the balance wheel. When you pull the stem out to the second position, that hack will articulate towards the balance wheel and then come out. And here we're going to remove the plate bridge on the mainspring wheel and the clutch assembly system so that we can take this bridge off and get to the hack, which is just underneath this bridge. Again, remember to keep these screws in a nice organized manner. They should always be put back into the holes they came from. So you might want to set up a system where you know which screw you took something from and where it came from, so that you'll always put it back in the right position. And we'll take the last screw out. And put that screw aside. Now we're gently going to remove that plate, and the mainspring is now unwound, so I'm not worried about anything coming out. And here you can see right there is the hack. That little hack goes on to the clutch, and then when you pull it out, it touches the balance wheel. There's a small little pin that falls into, and a groove in the clutch wheel that it follows. You'll see more later in this video. We go into when we put the new one in. So here's the new hack, and what I'm going to do is pull the old hack out, and we're just going to compare it so you can see exactly how the old hack, it's just got a little damage to it, unfortunately. You can see it's kind of bent to one side. So we're going to put the new hack in and get that in the little pin. And here we're going to take a look at exactly where it goes. You'll see in figure A, that's the little groove that articulates. B is the pivot point that the little hole on the hack goes into. And when you pull out the stem, it slides back and forth, allowing it to stop the balance wheel from functioning, or from oscillating back and forth. So now that we've got the hack in, we're going to put the bridge back in place. So I'm going to grab that, put that back in, and we want to make sure it goes in the correct position. Just kind of move it around here. Maybe I had a little too much coffee this morning. There we go. Once that's back in place, I'm adjusting the click spring. Click spring was a little bit loose to my liking, so I just wanted to make sure that click spring was nice and tight. I'm going to put the click back in. That's the first part that goes back into the watch. And it just goes in a certain way. It has two little pivot points on it. One is one makes contact with the ratchet wheel system so that you hear the click when you wind it, and it also locks it in place. The other is the pivot point for the south side of the click. And then we get it articulated into that click spring so that it'll spring back and forth. Now putting the screws back in place, and we'll gently tighten those up. There's the first one. Now I'll grab another screw, we'll put that in place. Again, we're making sure we put these back in the same position that they came from. You always want to do that because the screws kind of get embedded into certain parts of a watch, and they fit really, really good from the manufacturing. And there's the last screw. And we'll tighten the whole assembly down here. Thankfully, once each of these screws is tightened into position, I can test the hack and make sure that it works correctly by pulling and pushing in the stem and the crown, just to make sure that it works and operates functionally. Now we're going to get the ratcheting system back so we can get the winder gears back in place. So here's the first ratchet. And again, we're going to use this reverse threaded screw back in place. So remember, this will tighten in a counterclock position. So again, you want to be careful to make sure that you get it threaded correctly. This is probably the only screw in the watch that does have a reverse thread. So just remember that. And the reason it does that is because of the way the gear turns. Obviously it turns in a manner that you want a reverse thread on it, as not to loosen the screw up. Okay, now we're going to put the mainspring ratchet gear back in, and that is keyed, so it'll only go in one of 4 positions. Normally 1 of 2 positions on most watches I see like this. So we're going to just kind of get that in place, and now we'll put the screw in there. This is a regular threaded screw, so you're going to be turning this counterclockwise to tighten it, or I'm sorry, clockwise to tighten it. And now I'm just testing to make sure it winds, and that. Okay, so now we're going to reset the balance wheel back in position. Here you can see I'm being very gentle with the balance wheel, getting it under the first wheel into the balance jewel on the bottom. And we're going to set that in position. Once the balance cock is in position, I'll give the balance wheel a little turn just to make sure it's running. I gave this a couple little winds, obviously, to see if it had power, and it does. Now we're going to put the balance screw into the balance cock bridge. Once I get it started, I want to do this very, very gently so that if there's any issues with the balance staff, I'll find them out. And here I'm just giving it a quick little turn and giving the watch almost full power so that we can see the balance wheel working good. Now I just pulled it out to the second position, the crown, and you can see the hack is working perfect. Final step is to get the automatic winding system back in place, and here we're going to do that. It goes back in one position. You just have to be cautious how you do it. You don't want to push down on it until you get it set into position. There's a one little hole, one little gear that goes in, and then the 2 screw holes that hold it in position. So here we're lining it up. It'll snap right into place, and then I'll give the flywheel a little turn one way or the other just to reseat the whole automatic wind system. Put the first screw in. Tighten it up a little bit. I'm going to hold it down with some wood stick, and that way I'm not going to damage the ball bearings. And then we'll grab the last screw, we'll put that in place. Again, you want to hold those screws very gently with your tweezers because you don't want them to pop out, fly across the room. So here we're tightening it down. This is the last screw back into the watch, and it is fully assembled. I'm going to tighten those down just to make sure that they're reseated correctly, and then we're going to twist it, make sure that flywheel works, and it does, and it's winding the watch spring, so we're in good shape. I'm going to give it a quick turn, and you can see that everything's working good. Second hand's moving. Pull the stem out to the second position, and the hack takes effect and stops the watch from functioning. Once you push it back in, it should start working automatically. And there you go. That's how we change a hack in a Rolex Tudor. It's pretty much the same thing for most Rolex watches of this nature. So they kind of all operate the same. A few differences here and there. A lot of the ladies' watches have much smaller hacks. Thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, guys, and if you liked it, hit the thumbs up and subscribe, please. All the subscribers I get, I appreciate. If you want a list of tools that I used here, they're on the website in the article on this whole process, so go there and check out the tools that are available. And if there's anything else that you'd like to see, leave me a note. Also, if you can, support us on Patreon, because your donations help make these videos possible, and those donations pretty much go to my coffee habit. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.